My name is Clara Hayes, 32, a single mother to a bright, intensely curious little boy named Leo. I juggle two jobs and chase late-night freelance gigs, just barely keeping our heads above water. Life has rarely been easy, but from every shard others tried to shatter me with, I've forged an unbreakable, quiet strength. The night that shifted everything began at my cousin Vanessa Thorne's engagement dinner. Vanessa, the bride-to-be, was a vision of effortless elegance, adored by all, practically radiating light in a satin gown that surely eclipsed my monthly rent. We hadn't exchanged more than a forced pleasantry in 6 months, not since her casual jab at a baby shower about me collecting diapers and regrets. I'd swallowed the insult then, smiling for peace, but the quiet sting had lingered. So when the invitation arrived, thick cream cardstock, embossed gold lettering, radiating a perfectly curated pretension, I hesitated. My mother's calls followed, 3 times, each a gentle but firm nudge. Just show up, Clara. Smile. Be polite. Don't cause a scene. That was her lifelong mantra. So I went. For her, for appearances, for Leo. I unearthed my best dress, slightly wrinkled, a touch too snug, borrowed heels from a neighbor, and let Leo choose the necklace. He picked a small silver heart, insisting it mirrored his own. Walking into that upscale restaurant, crisp white tablecloths, hush lighting, wine glasses gleaming like fragile crystal trophies, I felt it immediately. The silent hum of tension beneath feigned smiles, the subtle sheen of judgment, the pre-assigned roles everyone effortlessly slipped into. But a truth I hadn't yet grasped was this. I wouldn't be leaving that room broken. I wouldn't be the one to shrink. The narrative would shift. The focus would turn. And for the first time in what felt like an eternity, someone would finally rise up. Not to uphold a perfect facade, but to speak a raw, undeniable truth. Vanessa and I, once inseparable as children, had drifted. Somewhere between college acceptance letters and awkward family reunions, she'd ascended to golden girl status, while I had quietly become the family's disappointment. She graduated with honors, traversed continents, dated men whose success was measured in stock portfolios. I, at 23, became pregnant, raised a child alone, and restarted my life more times than I could bear to count. The chasm between us wasn't merely about divergent life choices. It was about the stories our family chose to tell. Vanessa was the triumph. I was the cautionary tale. At the dinner, I was relegated to the furthest end of the expansive table, wedged between my mother and Aunt Carol. Aunt Carol, for her part, spent the first 10 minutes scrolling through endless Halloween photos of her pug, subtly conveying that my existence outside of being Leo's mom was irrelevant. Meanwhile, Vanessa glided through the room with practiced grace, a queen dispensing air kisses and shimmering, effortless compliments. She offered me barely a glance. When she finally did, it was with that particular brand of razor-sharp politeness that felt less like a gesture and more like a precisely aimed jab. "You came alone?" she inquired, her eyebrows arching subtly. "Just me and Leo," I replied, my voice steady despite the tremor inside. "Oh. Well, the kids' table is over there," she said, already turning away, dismissing me before I could even formulate a reply. My mother leaned in, her whisper a dry leaf rustling. "Just keep your head down. You look nice tonight. Not beautiful. Not I'm proud of you. Just nice." As if that was the zenith of ambition for a single mother. Pleasant, quiet, ultimately forgettable. I tried to become invisible, to simply survive the evening. Leo, bless his oblivious heart, sat at the kids' table, sketching spaceships on a napkin and giggling with newfound friends, as only children truly can. I navigated the minefield of shallow conversations and polite condescension, passing butter and offering thin smiles. These were relatives who hadn't called in years, yet still felt entitled to dictate the best course for my life. Beneath the surface of clinking glasses and rehearsed toasts, a cold, unwavering current of judgment flowed. Each word, every sidelong glance, was a sharp reminder. I was tolerated, never truly accepted. My late shifts, the bedtime stories, the stack of overdue bills, all irrelevant to their polished narratives. I wasn't a story worth telling. I was a whispered warning, a cautionary tale spoken behind closed doors. Still, I remained seated. For Leo, for the hopeful girl I once was, who believed families were sanctuaries. I clung to the futile hope that if I smiled wider, played along diligently, someone might finally see me. But a bitter truth settled in my gut. They didn't want to see me. They wanted me silent. They wanted me small. And for far too long, I had given them precisely what they demanded. The moment arrived during the main course. Plates cleared, wine glasses freshly refilled. Vanessa rose, a practiced grace in every movement, tapping her champagne flute with a silver fork. Her diamond ring blazed under the lights like a sudden camera flash. All eyes snapped to her. "I just want to say," she began, her smile a perfect, polished curve, "how utterly grateful I am to be surrounded by so much love tonight." A ripple of polite applause, a few murmured cheers. Then her gaze, slow and deliberate, drifted to me. "I just hope," she said, a brittle, dismissive laugh punctuating her words, "I never end up like some people. Single, pushing 30, and raising a kid alone." The room detonated with laughter. Not the uncomfortable, nervous chuckle when a line is accidentally crossed, but robust, comfortable, cruel laughter. My Uncle Victor, her father, slapped the table, his booming voice adding, "You know what they say, men don't want used goods. That's just the way of the world." Even my own mother let out a small, almost imperceptible laugh, her hand flying to cover her mouth as if to diminish the pain. I sat frozen, a statue in a burning room. My skin prickled with humiliation. My heart hammered in my chest, a desperate bird trying to escape. I kept my eyes fixed on my lap, gripping the linen napkin beneath the table, so tightly it shredded into a damp, crumpled knot. Across the opulent room, Leo continued to draw his spaceship, blissfully unaware of the emotional shrapnel tearing through me. I wished the floor would simply swallow me whole. Not a single person spoke up. Not one voice dared to say, "Enough." Even those whose faces betrayed a flicker of discomfort remained silent. It was easier that way. I had been so perfectly cast in this role for so long. The mistake, the cautionary tale, that challenging it now would be an inconvenience they simply couldn't afford. Vanessa, basking in the glow of her cruel humor, moved on. She launched into another lighthearted barb about how Ethan had to forsake his video games and how he wouldn't survive marriage without her expert guidance on wardrobe. The laughter this time was thinner, more hesitant. A few people shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but still, no one intervened. My Aunt Carol leaned in, her whisper a flimsy shield. "Oh, honey, don't take it personally. Vanessa just likes to be the center of attention." But it wasn't about attention. It was about power. It was about firmly reiterating my place, or rather, my lack of one. I felt like a specter in that opulent room, present but utterly devoid of substance. My worth had been distilled to a cheap punchline. My entire complicated life reduced to a single, dismissive laugh. For a fleeting moment, I envisioned myself rising, delivering a scathing retort, and sweeping out in a blaze of righteous fury. But I didn't. Not yet. I scanned the faces around the table, faces of people who had, at various times, claimed to love me. And in that moment, I understood. Their love came with conditions, with silence, with a heavy cloak of shame. So I sat there, my hands trembling, my chest a tight knot, my mind screaming an unheard protest, while my face remained a mask of stillness. "I am not what they say I am," I chanted silently, a mantra against the rising tide of despair. I thought of Leo, just a few feet away, safe in his vibrant world of crayons and imagined stars. And I made a silent, unshakable promise to myself. I would not let their mockery define me, or rewrite the fundamental truth of who I was. What I didn't know then was that someone else in that room had heard everything, too, and he wasn't going to remain silent. The room still buzzed with residual, low laughter and uneasy murmurs when Ethan, Vanessa's fiancé, slowly pushed back his chair and stood. He said nothing, just began to walk. Not towards the restrooms, nor the bar, but directly towards me. The subtle shift of chairs ceased. Forks paused, suspended midair. Even Vanessa, mid-sentence in her next anecdote, faltered, her eyes narrowing as he passed her. He traversed the entire length of the table, his steps deliberate, until he stopped directly beside my chair. "I think they should know something," he stated, his voice calm but resonating through the sudden vacuum of sound. Silence. A profound, absolute silence. The kind that thickens the air, holding every breath hostage. Vanessa blinked rapidly, a flicker of confusion crossing her face. Uncle Victor slowly lowered his wine glass. My mother, for the first time all night, truly looked at me, not simply through me. Ethan turned to face the entire room, his voice steady, unshakable. "Vanessa," he began, using her full first name with a quiet force. "That wasn't just a joke. That was cruel." She tried to interject, a flush rising on her cheeks, but he raised a hand, stopping her. "No. I need to say this." He scanned the faces, locking eyes with those who had so readily laughed moments before. "You all treat Clara like she's some kind of failure, as if her life is something to casually mock. But what many of you don't realize," he continued, his voice gaining quiet power, "is that she is the strongest person in this room." I froze, my breath catching painfully in my throat. 2 years ago, Ethan recounted, I was unexpectedly laid off. I spiraled deep into a depression, drinking far more than I should have. Vanessa told me to snap out of it. Uncle Victor told me to stop being weak. But Clara checked in on me every single week. No one stirred. She didn't just offer empty platitudes. She gave her time. She helped me rewrite my resume. She connected me with someone in her network. She even volunteered to babysit my niece, so I could attend job interviews. He turned slightly towards me then, his gaze gentle. You barely knew me, Clara, but you showed up when literally no one else did. You helped pull me out of something truly dark. You didn't seek credit. You didn't expect praise. You just helped. He turned back to the stunned assembly. So when you laugh at her, you're not just laughing at a single mom. You're mocking the person who helped me painstakingly rebuild my life. You're mocking real strength. The silence in the room became a suffocating weight. Vanessa, her face now a mask of incredulity, pushed back her chair. What? She demanded, her voice rising sharply. Are you doing? I'm being honest, Ethan replied, his voice still unwavering. I've endured enough shallow compliments and performative toasts tonight, but I will not sit here and allow you to tear down someone genuinely good, simply to inflate your own ego. Vanessa's eyes narrowed dangerously. Are you trying to embarrass me? No, he said, his voice flat. You managed that perfectly well on your own. A few faces instinctively turned away. A cousin gazed intently into her wine glass, as if answers resided at the bottom. Uncle Victor's florid face darkened further. My mother sat rigid, her hands clasped so tightly in her lap, her knuckles gleamed white. Then Vanessa, giving voice to the unspoken question hanging in the air, asked, Do you have feelings for her? Ethan looked at her then, a genuine bewilderment in his eyes, as if seeing a stranger. I have respect for her, he articulated, each word weighted. Deep, unwavering respect. And if you spent less time curating an image of perfection and more time genuinely listening, perhaps you'd comprehend why that truly matters. His words landed with more force than any insult, any laughter, any silence that night. Because it wasn't just about me anymore. It was about values, about what we choose to protect and what we choose to ridicule, about the kind of people we elevate and the kind we casually dismiss. I swept my gaze around the table. No one dared to speak. The judgment that had previously been so deafening now hung in the air like a thick, choking fog, broken only by Ethan's quiet defiance. And in that electric moment, a profound realization washed over me. For the first time in my entire adult life, someone was standing up for me, not in a whispered aside, Not in a sympathetic text later, not behind closed doors, but right here, right now, in front of everyone. He had wrenched the harsh spotlight from my supposed shame and fiercely redirected it onto their casual cruelty. I was no longer the punchline. After Ethan's words, the entire room seemed to freeze, locked in tableau. The laughter had evaporated. The clinking of glasses was gone. Only a silence, so thick it felt like a physical pressure against the walls remained. Vanessa still stood, arms crossed tightly, her face a mask of incandescent rage. She searched the room, desperate for an ally, for someone to rescue her from this public humiliation. But no one moved. Not a single person rose to her defense. My Uncle Victor finally cleared his throat, muttering, "He's just emotional. Don't take it so seriously." Ethan didn't even glance his way. His gaze remained fixed on the stunned faces around the table. "You want to talk about emotion?" he asked, his voice cutting through the quiet. "Let's talk about the emotion it takes to raise a child alone, to work 2 jobs day in and day out, to generously give your time to someone else, without ever expecting anything in return. That isn't weakness. That is strength." Vanessa's eyes, narrowed to slits, blazed. "You're making this about her." "No," he corrected quietly. "You already did. I'm just not letting you get away with it." Then his gaze softened, turning to me again. "You didn't deserve that, Clara," he said softly. "Any of it." My throat tightened, a lump preventing any words. I wanted to utter a thank you, perhaps, but nothing emerged. So, I simply nodded. It was all I could manage, and in that moment, it felt profoundly enough. My mother looked at me then, truly looked. For the first time, I detected something in her eyes that resembled regret, a dawning awareness. Perhaps she finally glimpsed the silent damage her complicity had wrought. I didn't expect an apology. Not from her, not from Vanessa, not from anyone in that room. But something deep inside me shifted, like drawing the first pure breath after being held underwater for an agonizing eternity. Ethan didn't touch me. He didn't swoop in to rescue me. He simply stood there, a quiet, unwavering presence, close enough to convey, without a single word, "You are not alone." And in that stillness, in the profound tension that had finally fractured, I saw something far deeper than mere revenge. I saw recognition. They hadn't broken me. They had merely, starkly, revealed themselves. And for once, I didn't shrink. I didn't retreat into myself. I sat taller in my chair than I ever had before. Then I stood, not in a burst of anger, not burdened by shame, but simply steady, whole. I scanned the faces around the table, faces that had laughed, pitted, or simply ignored me. I saw Vanessa, rigid in her seat, her cheeks flushed not with embarrassment, but with simmering fury. Uncle Victor reached for his wine, feigning a nonchalance that utterly failed. My mother stared fixedly into her glass, her fingers trembling slightly. But I wasn't there for them anymore. I turned to Leo. He looked up from his elaborate napkin spaceship, his smile as wide and pure as the morning sun. "Ready to go home, sweet boy?" I asked. He nodded, slipping his small hand into mine without a moment's hesitation. We didn't say goodbye. We didn't need to. As we passed Ethan, he offered a subtle nod. Not dramatic, not showy, just a quiet, profound acknowledgement. You were seen. You mattered. I clutched Leo's spaceship drawing in one hand, his warm fingers entwined with mine in the other. And I walked out of that room, my head held high. Not because I had finally been defended, but because I finally fully understood. I had always been enough. They just hadn't seen it. But I did. And that, I realized, was all I ever truly needed. We often conflate strength with outward displays, loud, sharp, undeniable. But sometimes, the most profound strength is quiet. It's the unwavering choice to show up, even when you know you'll be judged. It's holding your ground when no one else stands beside you. It's raising a child with fierce love, even as the world attempts to shame you for doing it alone. Clara Hayes didn't retaliate with insults. She didn't storm out in a dramatic exit. She stayed. She stood. And in doing so, She illuminated more than just the casual cruelty of a room. She revealed the quiet, resilient courage that doesn't need to shout to be profoundly heard. Vanessa believed the night was hers, that she could humiliate someone to steal the spotlight for herself. But what she failed to grasp was that true power doesn't stem from dominating a room. It emanates from speaking an unvarnished truth, without apology. And Ethan, by rising in that pivotal moment, reminded everyone that silence can indeed be complicity. But one voice, one honest, brave voice, holds the potential to change everything. So if you've ever been the outsider, the quiet one, the one labeled less than for daring not to fit their narrow mold, remember this. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't owe anyone your shame. Sometimes, the most powerful act of defiance is simply to refuse to shrink. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to share it. Leave a comment below if you've ever chosen dignity over drama. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that serve as a potent reminder. You don't need permission to take up space. You already belong. As Clara stepped out into the cool night, Leo's small hand nestled firmly in hers. The air didn't feel colder. It felt lighter, as if a great, oppressive weight had finally lifted. There was no applause, no grand finale, just the stark, liberating truth and the quiet, undeniable power of being seen. She didn't leave in defeat. She left in full. And perhaps, just perhaps, someone in that room will pause and think twice the next time they mistake silence for weakness. Because sometimes, the most unforgettable revenge is simply living your truth, without apology, without fear. If you felt that, like, share, comment, and remember, your story matters.